Oh, come, let us adore him. When I was in my theology studies, it wasn't that unusual for me to sleep in a little bit on Saturday mornings. I love being up early. I don't like waking up early. I like being up early. But every once in a while, like everyone else, I just need to sleep in. And I would usually do that on Saturdays because it was a free day. And so when I did sleep in on these occasional Saturdays, I wouldn't do my holy hour first thing in the morning like I normally did. Instead, I would get to work right away on the schoolwork that I always work so diligently at doing. And so I would work in the morning, and I would go to Mass right before lunch, go to lunch, work a little bit more in the afternoon, possibly after a little nap. And then by early afternoon, I was stir crazy, so I needed to get out of the house. I had to go walk around. And so usually I would walk into the city, find a church that either I liked or hadn't been to, and I would do my holy hour in that church. And so on one of these Saturdays around this time of year during the Christmas season, I did this. I found myself in a Carmelite church just down the street from our college. And as I prayed, I noticed this Italian family walk into the church. And so because that can be somewhat of an unusual sight, to see an Italian family go into a church and not just talk outside of it, I watched them. And as I prayed, these two little Italian girls with their family, walked in. They kind of strayed away from their family as kids like to do. And they found themselves at the foot of the steps of the sanctuary. And there was this beautiful manger scene. And so these girls probably were both under 5 years old. The older one knelt down in front of the scene, pulled her little sister to kind of instruct her to do the same. And they both crossed their hands, bowed their head, and said a little prayer in front of the manger scene. As I watched this, immediately, about half of the bad things that I thought about Italians disappeared. They went up a little level in my book. Oh, come, let us adore him. Today we celebrate the Epiphany of the Lord. And as we heard in the Gospel, the focus of this celebration of the Epiphany is the revelation of Jesus, the Messiah, to the Gentiles. The revelation of Jesus to the non-Jews, to all peoples of every nation. And it's interesting what the Magi did when they arrived at the manger. And when they got there, they found Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And we hear that they prostrated themselves and did him homage. They prostrated themselves. They laid down and did him homage. In the presence of the King of Kings, in a stable, in Bethlehem, they bowed down to show him respect, to pay him homage, to adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. It is significant that Jesus was born, as we hear, in that town of Bethlehem. It was the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Old Testament, but also Bethlehem, translated, means house of bread. Jesus was born in a city whose name means house of bread. And he was laid in a manger. Right? The French word for eat is spelled very similarly. Don't judge me on my pronunciation, right? Manger. Manger. To eat. The one who would later say, I am the bread of life, was born in Bethlehem, the house of bread. And he was placed in a manger, which was a feeding trough for animals. What does this mean for us? When those little Italian girls arrived at the creche, at the nativity scene, at the manger, when the Magi arrived at the manger, they bowed down. They prostrated themselves. They adored him. And we ought to do the same. Every time we come to this Bethlehem, to this house of bread, the house of the bread of life, we come to adore him. If we're wise, like the Magi, then we will come often to adore him. We will come when it's difficult to adore him. I did a little research on the journey of the Magi, and although it's not exact, one person mentioned that, judging on what is said in the scriptures, that their journey could have been around 400 miles. Right? They weren't just on their way and said, let's stop in and see this newborn king. Right? They were on a mission, 400 miles. He said it would have taken 2 to 3 weeks by camel or a month by foot, and it would have taken them even longer if they would have traveled by night, which they likely did because they were led by a star, which we know usually aren't out during the day. So we should come often to this house of the living bread to adore him. I'm always amazed and inspired whenever I see people stopping in the church, going to the chapel throughout the day while I'm busy about all of my things, to see them stopping their day to come and pay him a visit is inspiring. Right? They have been led by the star. They're searching for something. They're searching for someone, and they know that it's in the chapel, in the house of the living bread, that they find him. And so as we come to the end of this Christmas season, we pray that we would have that childlike wonder of those 2 little Italian girls, that we would have the childlike wonder of the Magi. The Magi were men who were searching, right? Who were searching for the truth. And this is why the star could lead them to the one who is the truth. And so we pray for a greater desire for the truth, a renewed desire to see Jesus. If we search for him, we know that we will find him. And so let us come frequently to our Bethlehem to search for him. And when we do find him, our only reaction can be that of those little girls of the Magi, that we prostrate ourselves and we adore him. We don't necessarily have to lay down on the floor. You might get stepped on if you do that. But we do bow down, right? We bow down by coming in the doors. We take on that virtue of humility to stop our day to come and to adore him. We literally, most of us, bow down when we get in here. Right? We genuflect to the tabernacle. Before the King, we bow and we adore him. And so, if we do this, then even though the Christmas season has to end, the true meaning of Christmas, the spirit of Christmas, can remain with us throughout the year. It can remain in our hearts each time we're in the presence of the bread of life. We have this deep desire to see him, to know him, to adore him. And so we continue to pray, "O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord."